So now that our framework is all done, which again we used the 4x4 pressure treated to do the outside perimeter, and then we filled the infield in with our 3/4 inch rock, and then we put a skim layer of our paver fines on top and compacted it. Now we were affected by the weather, so during the final completion of the compaction and getting the surface prepped, we encountered a lot of rain, and it took away all the fine powder on the surface, and it really messed that up. So rather than having a bunch of loose pebbles that were underneath the foam that would translate or transfer through to the surface, and you can feel them underneath that, we decided to clean that surface off. And then what we've done is we've now got rid of all the loose pebbles, and we've come through and added a layer of sand just to fill in any voids and divots and such. So now that we've got that in, that's why the field has looked drastically different. It takes on more of a white appearance. So now we're starting to roll out our foam. So we've done some pre-cuts on the tennis court, and now we're just rolling those out right now. We're 40 feet crossed on the field, and I always like to order 1 foot over an extra. So we ordered 82-foot rolls, and we cut them in half on the tennis court. So what that allows us, it gives a little bit of extra overhang so we can trim. So if there's any variations in the actual field itself, we're able to cut perfectly to it. Now what you see us doing here is, because these are in large runs and we don't want to drag the material, is that we'll start wafting it, your turf or foam, to get it into position. And then once it's in the position, then you can pull out and make any adjustments on any wrinkles without dragging it across the surface and messing up those areas that you just spent time getting ready. Okay, so what we're doing is to make sure that the foam stays in place and the wind doesn't catch underneath it and it gets moved around. You can take duct tape. This is the 2-inch wide. You can use Gorilla Tape, anything like that. And you just put this out over the seam, and it holds the seam very well, keeps the material from flying all over the place, and it's a low profile of enough tape that it's not going to transfer to the surface when you're doing your putting green. So this is a fantastic way just to kind of keep these joints or seams together until we can get the turf rolled out on it, which we're going to do here in just a moment. And the nice thing about this too is that you can take all your scraps and tape these together underneath your playground area, or in this case the field. You can do it under putting greens, but I really try to minimize the amount of seams that I have underneath the putting green. Just so I want to make that as clean as possible. So the less pieces that I have taped together, the better. Okay, now that we got the foam underlayment laid out over the entire green, and we have our putting green, and what we did, we kind of semi-staggered them because we're going to make our shape to go up. Now we're cutting off our factory tabs. We're cutting in between sections 3 and 4, and it's extremely hot out today. It is very hot out today. So the turf has expanded, and what we want to do is we want to hurry up and get these tabs cut off quickly and get it lined up and start the gluing process. Because what happens is, if you were to kind of cut this in advance and leave it, the material, there's a lot of material there, it'll start to kind of mushroom over, and then it crowds itself. So when you try to seam it up, instead of the fibers standing vertical, they have curled over on themselves, and it's much harder to do the seaming. So we're going to hurry up and we're going to get those cut off really quick. Then we're going to get this lined up into the position where we want it to. We've already cut our seam tape paper and laid it underneath. So as soon as we're done with the other side, we're going to line it up and we're immediately going to start gluing. Try and limit things like this here, which is rocks and pebbles getting on it, because we're wearing our shoes and boots. So again, just pro tip, just go in your socks and try to limit the traffic on this as much as possible. And it'll be much easier to get the sand in when it's time to do it. So what we like to do is, I like to take one of the 1-gallon buckets, and I just set it right in between the 2 pieces of turf. And what that does is it separates it just enough so it creates the area behind, and it leaves it open enough so that you can have one person putting out the glue and the other person spreading it. and it doesn't close it on itself prematurely. It actually works like a zipper. And then about 6-7 feet or 8 feet past that, I'll run a 50-pound bag of Infill. And what that does is that holds those pieces farther down the line from opening back up, but it also creates pressure so that the turf is making good contact with the glue underneath on the paper. And then as we do it, we just slide it along. This type of glue, especially in this weather, this hot weather, humid weather, it's moisture activated, so it actually pulls the water out of the air, and it makes it dry that much faster. So your working time on this is fairly short. However, doing it this way, where we don't open the turf all the way open and expose the black backing to the sun, which will actually make that stretch out even further than it does when it's green side up. This allows that sun exposure limited to the black backing, and then you just slide your bags with it. So it'll go pretty quickly when you have a team. Another pro tip, just keep in mind, if you ever get any of the glue on the turf, don't panic, just leave it there. Take some water and pour the water on the glue spot or glob. Because this stuff is moisture activated, it will actually foam and dry faster. In about an hour you can come back and pop it off, because it won't stick to the fibers. So don't panic, don't try to smear it and wipe it off, you'll actually make it worse. Just go ahead and pour water all over that. Alright, now that we got the bags on here for weight, we're going to let this sit and dry. Then we'll come back and should be seamed up here pretty good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on locating the cups, and we're going to chalk those out, and then we're going to start doing the shape of the green and then get that cut. Okay, so what we're using is just sidewalk chalk. You can pick this up at Target, Walmart, it's kids sidewalk chalk. And what we're doing is we're going to mark all the holes with the chalk. That way we're not accidentally walking on them and stepping on them and messing the area up. And the great thing about the chalk is that this is how we're going to draw our design out on the green, because it'll leave a mark, but if we make it, we just erase it, but it allows you to make your marks and step back and take a look at everything before you actually cut, because you might not like the design that you just laid out. So we're going to mark these first. I like to put a nail in the center of the cup so that we can find it, because if it does rain and it washes it away, we're able to just come back and easily find it. But now we're going to start marking around the outside perimeter of where the green is going to get laid out based on where the holes are right now. So as we use the chalk all around the green area, once we've come up with a shape we like, then we come here with the loop pile cutter and we just trace the line that we made, and it gives us a nice clean cut and shape all the way around, because all we did was follow the chalk line. So now that we've got that cut and all laid out, the next thing we can do is we can start working on the outside perimeter of the green. Okay, when matching the landscaping turf or your outside fringe, which we always do last, so we do the collar first. So we've got the collar in here, which is our intermediate. This is 1.25 inches. And then we're butting it up or meeting up with our 2-inch tall landscape turf, which we will cut to this. And we've already done our shape. We used our tool and brought our shape. Now, we're just laying large rectangles over top, and then we're going to trim off our excess. Now, to make it easier, just a little bit of a pro tip, since we got to follow some curves, every foot or so, and if it's a tight curve, you'll do it more often, but I like to just create relief cuts. So then that way, all I'm doing is I'm pulling back anywhere between 6, 8, 10, 12 inches of material in one area that I can work and do my cutting with, versus trying to peel back a section that ends up being 7 or 8 feet, and it's just harder to work with. So when I pull it back, now I've got a smaller section that I can work with. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, you'll see the beads here on the back, I'm just going to press it down to where it's going to touch and make contact. So the one that's making contact, I just want to put my fingertip on that one, and I'm going to cut right past it. So I know that now the piece that's going to meet up with it is actually the one that's going to almost make contact with with the collar turf here, and then that way it's not bunching and it's not causing the turf to stand back. So now that I got the appropriate distance and I got a brand new blade in, I'll just slide my knife down through, and then now you can see where it meets up. And again, the grain of all of the grass is always falling towards the green. So as we work our way around, the grain will basically facet around, kind of like the hands on a clock or the numbers around a clock, and it will just facet as we go around. So this, we have the landscape grass and both the collar here pointing in towards the green. So we'll just continue to make our cuts. Now, the other reason why we're faceting the turf and angling in always as we rotate around the green is that we've got seams, because we've got different turf meeting up at different points. And by running that material always falling in towards the green, you always get the best angle all the way around because you're looking against the grain. But also, more importantly, is that when the grain is falling forward, or the turf is falling forward, it hides the seams where the two different turfs are meeting up. Now, when going around curves on a green, on a gradual curve, or a longer straight run, like we have here, you can do a 15-foot wide or longer piece to have the grain fall towards the putting green. But as you start to go around a corner, if you will, or a curve, if it's a very sharp curve, what you want to do is cut essentially wedges, if you will, or smaller rectangles to make it around, and then they overlap. So what we like to do is we leave, if possible, you leave one straight side so that you leave the vertical rows, and then you overlap to where you will cut one side at an angle across the bead rows. And what we'll do is we will line them up to where they touch. We will make notch cuts along the whole run, and then we'll use something straight, like a 90 or a long piece of aluminum, something like a rafter square. And then we will line that ruler up, if you will, with the notch cuts that we made, and make one nice clean long cut to then fit the pie wedges together. So as you can see, going around this curve here, which is rather sharp, that we've got, or abrupt, we've got 4 to 5 pieces that are 30 inches wide by 5 foot in length. And it does involve a lot more cutting, but the end result is that as it gradually goes around this faceting that we're doing, the grain falls in towards the green in all directions, and you can see that it's just slightly turning as we go. So the grain is not too far off from one another, so that the seams are barely, if at all, noticeable, because the grain is only slightly going in a different direction. Okay, so we are ready to start gluing our seams. Now, it is extremely hot out today, much hotter than it has been the past couple of days. So the green really stretched out, and we kicked all the wrinkles out, and it probably stretched the turf out 1/4 of an inch. So what we did was we went all along the perimeter and pulled out all the nails out of the collar part of the fringe, and we're just going to move that back. So rather than keeping that in place and having to cut all of the fringe material, what we're going to do is just pull it back, and then we'll get all of this glued, and then we'll put the putting green down, and then we'll put the collar turf right up next to the edge. And when that dries, then we go back to glue the fringe. We'll do the same with the fringe. So what we're trying to do is eliminate any cutting if possible, and just moving the material back to accommodate for the stretching. Now it's important when doing the glue for the putting green that we're using the smaller side of the stick, because this product is moisture activated. It pulls the moisture out of the air and it will start to foam up, and it sets up pretty quickly in this heat. So you want to use the smaller side of your spreader, the small teeth, like the 3/16, when gluing to the green. Now what we're doing, since all this stretched, we took all the nails out and then we glued, and we just pushed the fringe, the collar, to meet up with the green that has stretched out. And then we're putting our nails back in and securing it about halfway, so that the fringe material that's now on this, until the glue actually sets up, it's slippery and it'll move very, very easily. So what we want to do is just lock it in place until it has a chance to dry, and then that way we can then move the secondary. If we're able to, we move the fringe back. If we have to, we make a cut on the collar if need be. But preferably we like to move everything, but it's important to keep all of this stuff locked in place so it doesn't move. All right, so what we're doing now is we've already kicked out some of the wrinkles, and so we're going to take the power broom and we're going to go kind of against the grain, you want to call it that, and then we're going to get a lot of this grass clippings off. But we've been walking back and forth on the green and kind of stepping and depressing it and stuff like that, so we want to kind of get this fluff back up again, get a lot of this debris and stuff off. And then we're going to start dropping sand. So we pulled all the nails around the collar that's already been glued, pulled all the nails out. So we're going to clean this up. What the plan is that the sand gets in the green and then it weighs it down and it pushes the wrinkles out, so it expands out. Once we get all of this expanded out, then we're going to start trimming as needed in and along the perimeter of the fringe. And then areas where we don't have to trim, we just are going to pull the fringe back. Okay, so we're going to get a couple pounds of sand in here. We're doing a smaller 45-60, which is very, very, very small granule size. And this will broom in real easy. Just get a base layer in of the white or the tan, let this get in, settle in, and then add weight, which will push out any of these smaller wrinkles. And we're going to broom this in. We use a pine straw broom, which doesn't build up any static electricity on it, which makes it nice, because otherwise the static makes the granules stick to the fibers and they just won't settle in. So there are remedies for that. You can mix some fabric softener that's got the anti-static cling, a cap full in about a gallon, 2 gallons of water, shake it up and spray it on. That'll help take the static out if you have to use something like the nylon brooms. But if you can find yourself a pine straw broom, literally it's a stiff pine straw end, use that. That works fantastic. And this sand here is so small, it'll just settle in. I mean, you literally walking on it or just tapping it and it settles right in. So it's a good way to get in a good base layer, and then you can slowly start adding sand into it from there just to see how much you ultimately need to get in. So we're going to get probably about 25-30 bags in this area, which is just under 1,000 square feet. We'll get this in and broom it, and then we're going to start working on the outsides, because the sand will weight it down and push the wrinkles if there are any out, and we want the full thing to stretch out. And then we'll work on the gluing and cutting any extra that we need to in between the collar and the main fringe.